Time for another music review and another ranking video. Yeah, I like doing this. I know people don't like doing it, but I have started this back in '67. I'm now up to 2015, and so I'm going to go through my top 10. But first, honourable mentions. And in this video, the honourable mentions almost turn into really small snippets of a review of the albums. Now, I've got quite a few, and there'll be a list in the description and also links to audio. We'll start off with an album called Blood by a British singer, 25-year-old at the time she made this, Lianne La Havas, and it was her second following her debut in 2012. And this album's dynamic and poignantly self-assured. The highlighted tracks, single Unstoppable, is a breezy summer jam that pairs light-hearted bass and the groove. La Havas, whose soulful tunes place her in the conversation with artists like Alice Smith, Laura Mvula and Corinne Bailey Rae, another artist that I absolutely adore. And La Havas handles her six-string acoustic with elegance and precision. Recommended are her dreamy love songs, which shine naturally when exploring her own internal world. Green and Gold traces her coming of age through motifs from both her Jamaican and Greek background. The album's strongest ballad is the stunningly simple Wonderful, which showcases her at her finest, sultry, nostalgic and sweet. And the track is a gorgeous ode to love lost, its chorus enchanting. But wasn't it kind of wonderful? Wasn't it kind of wonderful, baby? With slow snaps. I suggest you give it a listen. It's Blood by Lianne La Havas. Honorable mention is the third album by the Australian band Tame Impala. It's titled Currents, and it swaps expansive fuzzy guitars for full-bodied bass and vivid synths. Kevin Parker, the band leader, remains as lonely as ever, although a hint of change is hidden amidst the songs. One called Yes, I'm Changing, pretty typical. Currents is a revealing statement of Parker's range and increasing expertise as a producer, arranger, songwriter and vocalist, while maintaining the essence of Tame Impala. Parker's just as irrelevant work in soul and R&B as he is with psych rock. New Person, Same Old Mistake has hints of shimmering Philly soul, for example. Currents could be called a transitional album, however. Get to listen to it. Next honourable mention is my haircut. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, you probably noticed it's a bit shorter, but still retains that debonair look. Yeah, not bad for 68, coming on 69. And my next album, Hit and Run Phase 1 by Prince. Sadly neglected when it came out, but I got into it recently. There's one absolute gem on this album called 1,000 X's and O's, a mouth-watering love fest with drooling Prince vocals and that dreamy, slowish, funky ballad that he's a genius at. Mr. Nelson has some neat guitar as well, but it's a bit brief, and Falling in Love Tonight has typical Prince rhythms that create the nighttime urge to get it on with a female, of course. The Decemberists, what a terrible world, what a beautiful world. This combines rock, jazz, folk and blues with its pop feel that's keenly intelligent, melodically adventurous, obsessively literate and perfectly willing to explore sadness and disappointment rather than just the upbeat moods that are expected to accompany catchy melodies. Highlight is the folk ballad Lake Song. The arrangements are richly detailed, playing on the dynamics of Chris Funk's guitars, Jenny Connolly's keyboards and accordions, and Joe Moylan's percussion. And the group takes much pleasure in the downbeat of its melodies. There's some nice harmonica, hang Marfing style guitar and a Southern Belle feel with hints of gospel. Very eclectic mix of great music. I need to get into this band more, but there it is. the 2015 release, What a Terrible World, What a Beautiful World by the Decemberists. Harry and Laurel by Sufjan Stevens. Got quite a few of this guy's albums. Take a bit of getting into. But unlike many of his recent recordings, the instrumentation and production here is quite sparse, featuring two harp-like guitars with an occasional addition of the piano. The lyrics, which is basically the meat of this album, illustrate the loneliness and loss felt by the author after the death of his mother. However, the pain is not concentrated on the death itself, but instead on their lack of relationship during the time she was alive. But the album's easy on the ear, and many critics state it's his best, although I prefer Illinois. But it's an impressive, albeit dramatic in its effort, in its delivery. So there we are, Harry and Laurel by Sufjan Stevens. This is Fast Forward by Joe Jackson. I've been a long admirer of this man's work right back to the late 70s when he emerged in the punk era with two great albums in a year. Look Sharp and I'm a Man were the names of those albums that you ought to check out. This is his 13th studio project. It's the first collection of new songs since the 2008 album Rain, which also I liked. The album was developed out of plans for a series of 4-track EPs, each relating to a specific city. Eventually, the EPs were combined and arranged into a full-length studio album. The 4 cities represented here are New York, tracks 1 to 4, Berlin 9 to 12, Amsterdam 5 to 8, and New Orleans 13 to 16, with each of the city's specific tracks having been arranged and recorded there. And Jackson worked with a different set of musicians in each location. There are 2 confirmed covers in the record, the remake of television See No Evil and a rendition of the 1930s German cabaret song Goodbye Johnny. All songs, as ever, written and composed by Jackson. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the New York cuts to give you a flavour. Track is Fast Forward, it's 6 minutes. First of the New York cuts, as said earlier, there's a lovely slow piano-led ballad with Joe's passionate vocal delivery, adding a poignant violin, a solo midsection which is terrific. This 6-minute opus is class personified, mood-driven. The lyrics and observation of caution by people stuck in misery, be they rich or poor. The message, be yourself. There's no place for envy or misery. Things are what they are, but shape the future and escape from the here and now. Couldn't agree more. Track 2, If It Wasn't For You. Much more of a poppy tempo here. Would have fitted neatly on Laughter and Lust, an album at the turn of the new millennium. Nice bass runs by Jackson's old bassist Graham Maybe, and the bass complements his Joe's piano, and we then get a tasty lead guitar solo by jazz great Bill Frisell, very Steely Dan-like. The lyrics, a relationship in turmoil, both responsible for hurt and pain, but a glimpse of staying together if desired by both. That's track 2. That before mentioned See No Evil cover, written by Tom Verlaine. It's a strange choice really, but much mellower than the original, and Frizzle's squealing solo is again impressive and comparable with Verlaine's schizoid delivery. The lyrics difficult to fathom even 40 years after first being released on the magnificent Marquee Moon. And then the last track, Kings of the City, another 5-minute piece. Nice refrain piano coupled with a gentle lull-like rhythm, plus slow percussive elements. It's polished and the arrangements are clean, not overpowering. Lounge jazz like lyrics about being older, boredom, TV, life now replaced with a realistic plan for one's life. No false dreams anymore. An ability to see the bigger picture as a king must do, or a city politician. So that's my take on Fast Forward. Surprised it didn't make the top 10. We'll see what is in the top 10 in a bit. On these honourable mentions, I Feed Trip. It's an album by Waxahachie, which is basically the creation of one Katie Crunchfield. She's the inspiration of this sort of DIY type folk infected indie rock with a touch of punk. She grew up in Alabama, naming her project after Waxahachie Creek, and Ivy Trip is her third, and finds her fronting a band featuring multi-instrumentalist Kyle Gilbride and Keith Spencer, both from a band called Swearing, one I've never heard of. It's similar to her 2012 lo-fi solo effort, American Weekend, but there's a greater range of instrumentation added without losing that approachable intimacy. I'm going to go through some of the tracks now, briefly. Breathless, some electronic keyboards and guitars that in the back of the mix adorn this mystical opener. It has a cowboy angst type of feel to it. Under a rock, very folk blues indie services with bluesy southern twang. The lead vocals are delivered by her excellently. Poison's up next, more throaty indie rock riffs. La Luz is the next track, has a late 80s Antipodean feel to it in the indie rock genre. And then Stale by Noon, a melancholic intro vocal with some solo keyboards. A song about imitating kind of love. And the last one I want to touch on is The Dirt. Very 90s indie feel that emerges in this rockier number. And lead guitar touches, very 60s like. Not a bad album, needs regular listening to, and unfortunately I haven't done that, but I still put it in the honourable mentions. Born to Play Guitar by Buddy Guy. It's his 28th album, and it's a collection of songs designed to showcase Buddy's oversized Stratocaster. So we've got Chicago blues, electric blues, harmonica blues. In fact, it's a blues album, not surprisingly, and the title track opens us up, which is very Chicago blues tradition, telling the birth of his talent. Wear You Out, he's joined by Billy Gibbons, who lays down some heavy stomp, and Wear You Out, Back Up Mama is next, and nothing to say about that, but Too Late, another fellow blues lifer, Kim Wilson, turns out, on this cut, and on Kiss Me Quick. There's a duet with Joss Stone, and there's also, further down the track, there's a contribution on Flesh and Bone from one Van Morrison, a moving tribute to B.B. King on this track. It's a heartfelt ballad, and although it doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the record, I think it was a very good choice. So there we are. No surprises. Buddy Guy. This is his 2015 album, Born to Play Guitar. Just mentioned him, but he had his own album out in 2015. Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. Perfect Amundo. Now, I have to say, this slickly produced album takes on R&B, soul and blues, and that Cuban Latino filter. It was a big surprise, and I loved it. One tends to expect some ZZ Top style riffs. He is a native of Texas, of course, but his musical influences are clearly much more expansive. Keyboards, lots of them, including the copious use of the Hammond B3, coupled with a thick use of the habanero, which is a Cuban instrument. And the result is a dense and molten momentum that's an immediately listenable to and danceable. It's a bit of a margarita in drinking to the unforgiving Laredo summer. And I really would suggest you give it a listen. It's strong stuff. Perfect Amundo, Billy Gibbons, not Billy Cobham. You Honey Bear, Father John Misty. Of course, he is from the band Fleet Foxes. That's where we first saw him, but he's been Josh Tillman has been the Father John Misty now for a number of years, and I think this is his fourth effort. No surprises, elaborate arrangements, very sort of choral with classical tones above that sort of underlying folk-like bass, not bass the instrument, B-A-S-E. A couple of tracks to talk about. Chateau Lobby in C for Two Virgin has some tremendous trumpet. It's a song about Tillman and his wife Emma exploring Los Angeles when they first met. Nothing Good Ever Happens at the Goddamn Thirsty Crow is a music hall swagger with strings and sumptuous mandolin interjets. I have listened to this album a few times, but it really does need more listens. So that's a snippet of that honourable mention for you to explore. A lot of honourable mentions here. It's really probably going to be my only opportunity really to look at this year of music. So my next one is A Head Full of Dreams by Coldplay. Lots of collaboration on this piece of work. One critic, however, described the album as emblematic of Coldplay's burning desire to be all things to all people, rolling up symphonic Britpop, bluster, club-thumping bangers, dentist office soft rock, finger-snapping R&B, and even some trippy touches that remind you of a time when this band just wanted to be as popular as Mercury Rev. It's okay, pleasant enough stuff. Didn't really hit me between the eyes though, so that's why it's in the honourable mentions. Honourable mention is the third solo album by Keith Richards. Yes, the Rolling Stones guitar player. This is called Cross-Eyed Heart, and it's his first studio album in 23 years. That album was Main Offender. And as with his first two albums, it was recorded with his bands, the Ex-Pensive Winos. And the album feels like it fell into place with its songs arising out of jams with a drummer instead of being excuses for drams. It's bookended by acoustic numbers. The first is the charmingly titled title track, a song that feels clipped in its conclusion. And the last is a version of Leadbelly's Goodnight Irene with the lyrics slightly modified. The album is a construction, a record that slides from obsession and without calling attention to transitions. Nothing here is surprising, but not even the overblown chess, a boogie of Blues in the Morning or the ska shuffle of London Overdue. But that familiarity is an asset. I absolutely love it. Thanks very much, Keith. Shadows in the Night, Bob Dylan, 36th album. I've hardly listened to this, but it consists of covers of traditional pop standards made famous by one Frank Sinatra. And all the songs were chosen by Dylan. He produced the album himself under the pseudonym Jack Frost. Dylan stated, I don't see myself as covering these songs in any way. They've been covered enough. Buried, as a matter of fact. What me and my band are basically doing is uncovering them, lifting them out of the grave and bringing them into the light of day. Say no more, Bob. More honourable mention is The Magic Whip by Blur, a new Blur album carved out of the Hong Kong recordings late last night by guitarist Coxon and producer Stephen Street, with albums subsequently adding lyrics and vocals. This is 13 years on from their last Think Tank. Coxon's description of the album was sci-fi folk, abundant in beautiful songs, hazily lovely melodies wind through My Terracotta Heart, Ghost Ship and the peculiar stew of military drums. There's high drama, strings and vocoder vocals that make up There Are Too Many of Us and New World Towers. More alienated, boggling at foreign landscapes is the kind of gorgeous ballad that quietly becomes Albarn's signature style over the course of his solo work. Worth exploring this album, I think. The end. Next up is Matador by Gaz Coombs. Of course, he was the front man for the English oddball Britpop band Supergrass. A number of their albums I really like. This album follows his 2012 debut, Here Comes the Bombs. And it's a pretty good album. I've listened to it a couple of times now. Standout track is Detroit, the wonderfully introspective acoustic track that builds for daydreaming and then gives way to overblown bursts of string-augmented gospels. 2020 is also a standout, a dark, mysterious feel with arrangements that echo a euphoria of 21st century electronica. Not bad album. Get to listen to it. Matador by Gaz Coombs.